So, good morning, everybody. I would like to ask you firstly if you can hear me. So, for the communication, we will use chat. So, if you could answer me using the chat, please, so that I can hear it and see it. Good. So, it looks good. So, thank you very much for your replies. We'll start step by step. It looks like we have about 30 people already in the class, so that's great. So thank you for your attendance. And we will do like two topics today. The first one is related to retail location, and the second one will be related to some calculations, basically. Sometimes I will try to ask questions, and I will wait for your replies using the chat, and I will look at your replies, and then eventually I can give you some comments. Unfortunately, I can't give you any work for working in Teams. That's why it might be a little bit faster. I mean, the class can take a little bit shorter, so it will be good for us maybe. So after the first chapter, we'll make a break, and after the break, we'll make the calculation exercise. So that's about the program, let's say. And tomorrow, I would like also to use the opportunity, and we can connect as well for the seminar class, so that I can give you the feedback on the game development, and after that, I will give you some instructions how to communicate and how to develop the game further. So that's about the program so far, and now we will start the first presentation related to retail location. So let's get started. Yeah, the first question I have here is why store location analysis is so important. So that might be the first question for you. Do you think that anybody from you can answer this question, please? You can type down using the chat the answers. Let's try that if it works or not. Why do you think that store location is so important and the analysis of store location is important? Any answers? Okay, I can see some answers. Good. Thank you. I will check your answers. Okay, so basically you are right, because the location is very important, because we need to understand the demand and how many potential customers we have in the given location. And of course, we need to understand the retail costs we have in that particular location. I can see some answers concerning the concentration of people. That's definitely very important as well. The distance between the consumers and the shops, that's also very important. So basically you are pretty right. So thank you for your answers, and now we can see the most important points. So basically what is really important is that we need to identify the demand in the area, and basically we can use the location analysis both for the analysis of the new store locations and also for the analysis of the already existing store locations. So basically for that, we need to understand if it makes sense, for example, to extend the floor space of the shops, if it makes sense to make it bigger, or if it's better to make it smaller. Then we can also take into consideration the changing of the store, positioning of the store, meaning adjustment of the assortment, prices, according to the situation in the market, according to the situation in the area. And of course, sometimes it's important to assess the performance of the company as well in relation to the, let's say, location, because maybe some locations have a big capacity of people, there is a big demand, but the capacity is not used. So that's why it's very important also for the performance assessment. And finally, we can also take into consideration the supply chain rationalization, which is also very important. So here we are talking about logistics in the particular area. So that's briefly why the retail location analysis is important. And now we will see how to make the analysis of the location. So basically, there are a lot of techniques and models which we can use for the store location analysis. The first one is called checklists. The first one is called checklist, and here we take into consideration the information about population, accessibility, competition, and costs. You can already start thinking about those checklists, about what kind of information about population, accessibility, competition, and costs we might need. I will ask you shortly about them, but I don't need the answers now. I will ask you in a minute, because before that I will show you the other options we have for the store location analysis. The second option is called analogs. I will explain it afterwards as well. The third option is called multiple regression or multiple regression analysis. And the last option is called spatial interaction, or the so-called gravity models. So basically, these are the four options we have: checklists, analogs, multiple regression, and spatial interaction models. We are not going to calculate all of them, of course, but we might be using a little bit some of them, and I will show you some let's say formulas and explanation about the spatial interaction models. So let's start with a checklist. So basically, when you are thinking about opening a new store in a new location, it's good to make a checklist concerning population, concerning the accessibility, competition, and cost. And the first point is going to be population. If we would have a normal class, I would divide you into groups and you would have to work on this task, thinking about what kind of information about population you might need in the particular area. But we can use also this chat. So perhaps you can tell me what kind of information about population you would like to have for the new location, let's say. Okay, I can see some answers. There are a lot of answers, which is amazing. It looks like you are answering much faster and much more willing than during normal class, which is good. So it looks like the chat is a good way. And so if we look at the answers, so most of you are saying the income level, age, the structure of the population, the health status, the number of households, the preference, then the population per square meter, which is good, basically. I definitely agree. These information are crucial, and basically we can use also all this information also for the segmentation, for the market segmentation. So here you can see quite a good link to the segmentation. Basically, it's also related to the positioning and to the marketing strategy of the store. So let's sum up all the information, and there are many. I have a list here. So we can talk about the population size, the age of the people, household, number of households, the size, the average size of the households, the income levels, so then the income per capita, then the occupation classifications. This is also important. Basically, we should also take into consideration who are the main employers in the area, because the main employers basically directly influence the economic level in the particular area, and also the economic stability and unemployment, basically. So far, let's say in the beginning of this year, the unemployment level was very low in most of the areas. Unfortunately, today, with the crisis, let's say, and so on, we will see what's going to happen. So let's see. But normally, this was not a big problem. Then we can talk also about seasonal fluctuations, which is also very important, meaning if people are moving from the area or not, if they need to travel for a job, etc. What is also important is to mention the housing density, meaning what kind of houses there are, if the people use mainly family houses or they live in the estate houses, or how old the houses are, etc. If the people really own the houses themselves, or they rent them, if they own the flats, etc. So that's also very important. Then we can also take into consideration the building plans of the area, if there are new houses going to be built, etc., etc. So this is also important. Somebody has mentioned also the lifestyle, which is also very important. It's one of the criteria. Then we can also mention the culture, which can be different in various areas. And finally, we should mention the shopping patterns, meaning the structure of what people are buying mostly, what people are consuming mostly, and what's the frequency, etc., etc. So basically, these population criteria or population points are really closely related to the segmentation, market segmentation criteria. We will talk about market segmentation in the next semester, hopefully. And definitely there is a strong link. So the population and the type of population has a strong link to the positioning of the store and the target segment. So hopefully everybody understands so far. Everybody understands so far? No problem. Good. Okay, so let's go on. Let's go on. Now I will show you the next part of the checklist, and that's the accessibility. Accessibility is very important, and here we need to take. It looks like somebody wants to use my presentation. Please don't use my don't control my presentation. I need to take it back. So the accessibility is very important. What accessibility for whom? Could you tell me for whom we need to take into consideration the accessibility? Suppliers, consumers. Okay, that's perfect. You can stop. All right, I can see a lot of answers again. So it's very important that there must be the accessibility both for consumers and suppliers. And don't forget, we also need the accessibility for the staff. That's well, I can see there is also the answer that we need accessibility for government. I'm not sure about that. Well, basically, I believe that's for sure. But concerning the physical accessibility, we really need to take into consideration the accessibility for three parties: suppliers, employees, as you have mentioned, and of course for consumers. So that's why we need to take into consideration the flow of pedestrians when we are talking about cities. Then we need to take into consideration the public transportation as well. If people are equipped with cars or not, then basically if people are going to visit the store by car, then we need to take into consideration the road network, if there are any restrictions, congestions, speed limits, etc. Of course, car park is very important as well, but not always, because as you can understand, there are many shops inside the cities, in the city centers, which don't have car parks. So in that case, it's not such a deal. So that's very important as well. And finally, we should not forget about visibility, because the store should be visible. And here we are talking mainly about stores in the city centers, because stores in the city centers sometimes can be a little bit hidden. They can be like hidden in the old buildings, in the passages, etc. So that could be the problem basically. So that's about the visibility. Of course, the accessibility for staff and for suppliers is very important as well. I think I will switch off the camera because it's not necessary, and we can continue. The next point is competition. Competition is very important as well. And the question is it good to have a big competition in the particular area or not? Of course, too big competition is not good, but do you think that competition could help somehow? What do you think? Can competition be an advantage for a shop? Okay, so let's see the answers. So you say yes. Okay. Let's see what you have mentioned. I can wait for a while. Basically, the bigger the competition, the lower the prices. So price sensitivity is very important. Yeah, innovation. You have mentioned innovation. That's also very important. There is a pressure for innovation. You are right. Competition can make you innovate. That's perfect. Customers can swap from your competition to you, but also vice versa. You are right. Competition can make the market more energetic. I would agree as well. So basically, of course, competition is healthy, and sometimes too big competition is bad, of course, but some kind of competition definitely is all right. So speaking about competition, we can talk about direct competitors, and here we are talking about retail companies selling the same assortment. So basically competitors from the same category. Somebody is talking there, so maybe you should turn down the microphone. Yeah, good for whom? I don't know what you've mentioned here. So the direct competitors basically are those which sell the same kind of goods. The indirect competitors are basically those shops selling the different goods. We can also talk about anchor stores. Anchor stores is important as well. I can see you are loading. So basically, you're recording. So actually, I don't know why, but we can make it recorded. It's no problem. The anchor stores are important. Do you understand the meaning of anchor stores? Could you tell me? What's the meaning of anchor stores? Any idea about anchor stores? Okay, there is one answer. Good. Okay, let's see. Basically, you are right. The anchor stores are really the big ones, or the most important brands, the branded stores which attract consumers into the shopping centers, into the shopping malls. There is one example like Zara. No, I can't see my presentation. I don't know what's the problem. Strange. Yeah, so basically, can you see my presentation or not now? Could you tell me? Yes, and I can't. That's strange. Yeah, I can see it all right, so it's fine. So yeah, okay. So basically, thank you for your answers, and we can continue. The anchor stores are basically those stores which are those like Zara, like IKEA, like it used to be like Toys R Us and Tesco, etc., etc. So these basically are the stores which attract people into the area. Then we can talk about cumulative interaction. The cumulative interaction, that means that the competition is good, because basically when you go to a shopping center and you are going to buy some some fashion, or let's say some clothes or shoes, whatever, it's always better for you to have a bigger choice. So basically, it's good to have a big competition in a shopping center and to have a big choice of many brands and many retail companies, and that's called cumulative interaction. And it means that the bigger the competition, the more attractive it is for the consumer because of the choice. Of course, when we are doing the analysis of the competition, we should take into consideration the existing retail specifications like the area, turnover, assortment, the age of the store, etc., etc. But also, we should take into consideration the development potential. Is there any space for the development? Are there any free spaces? Is it possible to maybe change the store, to change the positioning of the store, and so on? So that's also quite crucial. And finally, we can also calculate the so-called saturation index, or the so-called index of retail saturation. I will show you how to calculate that. So once again, if we summarize the information on this slide, I think it's very important to understand the term of anchor stores, like Zara, like Marks and Spencer, like Tesco, like IKEA, etc., and to understand the term of cumulative interaction, which is also very important because it means that the interaction of the competitors is absolutely crucial, and it makes actually the attractiveness of the area. And now let's see how to calculate the so-called saturation index, index of retail saturation. So there is one formula for you. And you can see it here. It seems to be a bit complicated, but it's not. Basically, the index of retail saturation can give us the information if the particular area is interesting for us or not in terms of business potential. And you can see there are like two elements at the top and one element at the bottom of the formula, and it's calculated as the number of consumers in the particular area. This is the C, number of consumers, times multiplied by the retail expenditures, multiplied by retail expenditures per consumer. So basically, you don't see it. Can you see it already or not? Is it better now? Can you see it? Okay. So yeah, the retail expenditures per consumer, and you divide it by the total retail floor space in the particular area. So you can imagine that there is the area, and the population of the area is like 30,000 people. Strange that somebody can't see it and somebody can. So basically, I can explain it again. You take the number of population, like 30,000 of people, and you multiply the number of people by the retail expenditures per one consumer. So you get basically the total retail sales in the area, and you divide it by the total retail floor space in the particular area. Then you get basically the sales per square meter in the area. And that's important. That's the index of retail saturation. The index of retail saturation basically measures the sales per square meter. And then you can compare your expectations with the index. So basically, if your expectations of the sales are higher than the index of retail saturation, then it doesn't make sense to go into the area. But on the other hand, if your expectations of the sales are still lower than the index of retail saturation, then it makes sense and it's good for you, so you can get into the area. Because if you move and if you build a new store in the area, if you build a new store in the area, then basically you will decrease the index of retail saturation, because you will increase the number of the floor space. So that's how that works. You can calculate the index, but then you compare the index with your expectations, what you want. So, and then you can decide if you want to get there or not into the area. Is the explanation clear enough for you, or shall I repeat it? Of course, sometimes it can sometimes last longer to understand it, but it's not a science. It's not a big science. It's simple. Yeah. So basically, retail sales divided by the retail floor space, and that's it. So basically, you can calculate it pretty fast and very easily. All right, so I will move on, and now we will get to the last component of the checklist, and that's the costs. Costs are absolutely crucial, and basically we were talking about costs 2 weeks ago, basically, when we were explaining the most important costs of retail companies. So you already experienced. That's why you might be able to tell me the most important costs again. What are the most important retail costs that you need to take into consideration? I can wait for a while. I can see your answers. Then I will give you feedback. Okay. Rent costs. All right. Sounds good. Operating costs. Sounds good. Overheads. That we mentioned overheads last time. Distribution costs. That's also very important. Production costs. Well, production costs might be important for private labels, let's say, but it's not that crucial. It's not that crucial for retailers. I can see maybe some more maintenance cost, POS systems, inventory cost. So definitely you are right. So thank you for the answers. Let's see. Looks like I can't see my presentation again, so I don't know what's the problem. Yeah, I can see it now. So now you can see all the types of costs step by step. I have mentioned all of them in my presentations. The first part is called the cost of land, the rent cost, because we need to own. Sometimes we need to own the building. Sometimes the building is rented. For example, in the Czech Republic, Tesco has all the stores rented. That's why the leasing terms are also important. Credit terms are important. We can also take into consideration the site preparation costs, the building restrictions and building costs, the maintenance costs, security costs. Of course, we should not forget about staff, because staff is like the most important element in one of the most important elements in retailing. And logistics and delivery cost you have already mentioned, so that's also very important as well, as you can see. So basically, you are all right. I I'm not sure if anybody. It looks like you haven't mentioned the staff costs. So that's something I would like to highlight, because people they cost a lot of money as well. So basically, in such a way, we have done like the first part, and that's the checklists. So we've done the checklists, and now I can show you also. And yeah, I have forgotten one. That's promotion costs. Yeah, basically, promotion costs. That's more again into retail marketing. But don't forget that you also need to communicate. You need to make some advertising. So that's also important. And now I can show you that we can also use maps in store location and store location analysis. On this picture, you can see one example of the so-called mapping techniques. And here we can see a part of, I think it's a part of England. And it shows basically the areas where there are like, these areas are called as the drive time bands, which means that each area measures or signifies and shows the area where all the people have it like 10 minutes to the store, where all the people have it like 15 minutes to go to the store. It measures the drive time. It measures the drive time by car. And it's basically related to the roads and to the accessibility of roads. So this is very important. Sometimes the roads basically show the accessibility as well. And here you can see a nice example of how the mapping techniques can help us to understand the store, the so-called store catchment area, or the drive time bands, basically. So this is one example, and I have one more. This is basically the same one. This is also based on the so-called drive time bands, because each color measures one drive time band. So here the yellow color shows the shortest time of travel, then the red color is a little bit longer, and the blue is the longest travel time. So, and it's related to the roads, basically, always, or the public transportation. And there is one more example. One more example of the store catchment area. It also measures basically the accessibility using the roads. So you can see the red area is like the closest one, and the dark blue area is like the longest one. And it depends on the accessibility using the roads again. So that's how we can use the maps in planning the stores. And sometimes we can also use the so-called geographic information systems. The geographic information systems basically combine information of maps and information about people, information about let's say lifestyle, about income, information about anything which is related to human resources. And the geographic information systems are normally used for town planning, for infrastructure planning, for roads planning and roads extension, let's say. And the GIS information system can also be used for building the stores. And I can show you one example because it can be combined basically with the basic information about people, like the demographic information, like the age information, the income, the average income per capita, about the lifestyles even. But I think this is more difficult to measure. Basically, I can't tell you exactly how to measure the lifestyle, but you can pretty much well measure the age. You can measure the income, average income, the power, purchasing power, let's say, etc. For example, on the next slide, we can see a map of Germany. So that's a map of Germany. It's a little bit smaller, it could be bigger. And this is like information from 2011, where you can see the purchasing power of German states and German cities. Usually the darker the color is, the higher the purchasing power. So you can see absolutely clearly what are the most important cities in Germany. Maybe you can tell me, if you look at the map, and tell me what cities are the richest one in Germany. If you can just check it shortly. Okay. So I can see Munich, Stuttgart, basically. Okay. Any other answers? Good. The bottom one's good. Yeah, basically, it's Bavaria, mainly Bavaria. It's Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg. It's also the north, like Hamburg. It's basically Munich. It's Stuttgart. It's Frankfurt, Düsseldorf, and Dortmund and those areas. So you are pretty much right, definitely. So you can see that the combination of maps and the combination of the information about let's say the purchasing power, and a lot of other information about people is quite important, and we can use it absolutely perfectly. And also, basically, if you look at the map of Germany, I can tell you that there is a clear difference between the so-called old German countries and the new German countries, because the western part is definitely more wealthy than the eastern part, with the exception of Berlin maybe, but still the eastern part is on this map you can see is quite different. So that was the example of the so-called mapping techniques. Everything is clear so far? Okay. It looks like sometimes is recording and starting the recording and stopping the recording. I normally don't want to record the presentation. If you want to, we can record it, of course. But I think I will definitely give you also the presentation on Insys, so you can have it. And now you should definitely concentrate on understanding that. So let's go on. And now we can talk about another technique of evaluating the stores, the store sites, and that's called the analog technique. The analog technique basically takes into consideration the similarities, because in the beginning we need to identify some other stores which are related or have a similar features to our stores, and we need to find a similar area. We need to find the similar area which is similar to our area. And when we have some area which is similar to our area, then of course we can quantify the most important feature of those stores, and definitely we can estimate the sales in the new area using the information we have from the old area, which is similar. So we can use the so-called extrapolation, because we understand, okay, there is a different area, but it's similar to our area, and we can use it in order to estimate the sales in our new area. I can show you one example, which is just here, and the example is based on 4 stores. You can see on this example there are like 4 stores: the store A, B, C, and D, and these stores are similar basically to our stores which we are going to build in a new area, let's say. And we have the information about the average per capita sales in the case of these stores. And basically we have also divided the consumers into 4 groups according to the driving time zones. So basically there are like 4 groups: customers who have it up to 4 minutes drive to the store, then consumers who have it from 5 to 9 minutes driving time, then consumers who have it over 10 minutes until 40 minutes driving time, and consumers who have it from 15 to 19 minutes. And based on the information we have, we can calculate the average per capita sales in the similar area. So from those A, B, C, and D, we can see that the average per capita sale in US dollars, for example, is 5.86 US dollars for the consumers who have it like up to 4 minutes driving time. So the same we can calculate for the consumers who have it until between 5 to 9. The same for the rest between 10 and 14, and finally also for those who have driving time from 15 to 19. And then we can use the information from the existing location which we have in the table, and we will just multiply the estimated sales per capita by the real population in the new area. So basically we use the information of the already existing stores in the, let's say, old area, and we take that information and apply it into the new area. So that's what we can do. So for example, we can multiply the number of population in the new area who live up to 4 minutes from the store, and the number of population is 32,000. Then we multiply it by 5.86, and we get the estimated sales. And in this way, we can calculate the estimated sales for each zone, basically for each area. So that's what we can do, and this is the way how we can use the analogs, basically. So we use the information we have from the already existing stores, and we extrapolate the information into the new area. Is that clear enough for you, or do you have any questions so far? Any questions so far? Or is it clear enough? Okay, so let's see. Basically, if any questions, don't hesitate to ask, because basically this is a little bit, this is the example which we can use for the explanation. You are not going to calculate. I'm not going to ask you to calculate this method. So don't be scared. It's just for you to understand how the analog techniques can be used. So now I will switch to the next method, which is called the multiple regression analysis. For those who already had statistics, this is quite clear, I guess. I hope you have already had statistics and you can understand a little bit of regression analysis, or not. Have you ever had statistics and regression analysis? Yes, yes, good. Okay, let's see the answers. All right, all right. So good to know. Again, I'm not going to force you to calculate the regression analysis. This would be even too difficult for us. But I can show you that basically we can use the multiple regression when apply it on the analysis of the area. And again, we use the analog stores. We use similar stores for the regression, similar stores in similar areas. And the aim of the multiple regression is to find out which are the variables, which are the factors that influence the variance in sales. Basically, which factors influence the variance in sales and how much they influence the variance in sales. And the aim is to find an equation, some formula which can predict the sales in the new area. And based on the experience and based a lot on the studies in the past, we have discovered that there are several factors which influence the variance in sales. And these are like 4, 5, 6, not more. So 4, 5, 6 factors, 6 variables which influence the variance in sales. Could you guess what is the most important element which can influence the variance in sales? Give me some suggestions, please. Corona, I can see one answer is coronavirus. Yes, unfortunately, yes. I can give you also my experience. Now, I am today not at the university. I'm in my company today, and we are trying to supply wine. So we are supplying wine to the retail chains, and I can tell you that the demand for wine is very high. But the problem is the logistics. The logistics is getting more and more complicated. So you are right that this is a very special situation. So hopefully we will all survive in a way. But could you tell me any other factors which influence variance in sales? Any other suggestions? I'm waiting for your answers. Please give me some answers. Open hours, okay, sounds good. Quality of the product, okay. Anything else? Quality of the product, again. Weather conditions.
Situation.
Yeah. Could you turn down the microphone? Okay, thank you. Promotions, perfect. Yes, that's true. But basically, you are all mentioning the variables which are changing during time. And now we need to find variables which are more or less stable and are related to the region, to the location, So basically, the first and most important element is the population. Again, so we need to understand what's the population in the area. That's number one. And the second element is basically the spending power of the population. That's absolutely crucial. Number of people and how much they are able to spend. So these are the elements which we need to take into consideration. Besides those, we can mention the transport length to the site. That's important as well. The average distance from the site to population. So we already have four elements. And finally, there is competition and also the average distance from competitor to population. So these are the six most important elements. Okay, so yeah, please turn down the microphone. Somebody. Okay, thank you. So we can continue. Good. Okay, I can mute him, but yeah, okay. Thank you. So basically, the six most important elements are population, spending power, transport links to the site, the distance from the site to population, competition, and also the distance from the competition to population. And now I can show you one example of the regression analysis example. So imagine the analysis has been done using the data of 25 similar, let's say analog or similar supermarkets of similar size located out of the town, let's say in the outskirts of the town. And it was found out using the multiple regression that the sales are equal to this equation. Sales are equal to 186.835 plus 0.7822 times P minus 1.1381 times C. And now I need to explain what that means. Basically, the numbers, these are the coefficients, regression analysis coefficients. And the first one is the constant, the second one is the population, and the third one is the competition. So basically, Y means the retail sales are equal to the constant plus the number of population living 20 minutes driving time from the site minus the coefficient times the floor space of all stores located within 20 minutes drive time and which are over 1,000 square meters. So you can see that the sales positively depend on the population in the particular area. So the population, of course, has a positive impact, and the competition has a negative impact. So the bigger the population, the bigger the sales, And the bigger the competition, the smaller the sales. So once again, population is positively influencing the sales and competition is negatively influencing the sales. But of course, we have already mentioned the spatial interaction, which means that sometimes the competition can be also useful. So using this formula, we can basically estimate the sales. So you just need to input the population figure and the competition figure. The population is measured in the number of people and the competition is measured as the floor space, meaning in square meters. So that was about the so-called multiple regression analysis. We are not going to calculate that, but I think it's good for you to understand it. Was it clear? Everybody is happy so far? I can see one answer, second answer. Okay, good. Thank you for your answers. There are still the same people communicating with me, which is nice, but also the rest can answer. There are like 32 people, it seems, listening to us, which is incredible, which is good. You know, I can say it's difficult for me because I can't see you, and when I don't see you, I don't have such a pleasant feeling, unfortunately. So, but we need to survive like this. So let's continue. I will explain you one more technique of the store location analysis, and once this is finished, we can make a break. But before that, let's see that. And the last technique which we normally use and which we can use, it's the spatial interaction or the spatial interaction models or the gravity models. Speaking about gravity, this is the term which we use from physics. And in physics, the gravity, the law of gravity means that the bigger objects basically are stronger than the smaller objects. And here in the gravity methods, we take into consideration the attractiveness and distractiveness, basically. The attractiveness is a positive factor, and it's based mainly, the attractiveness is based mainly on the size of the area, the number of the population, or let's say it's based on the floor space. The attractiveness is measured as the floor space, mostly in these models. And the distractiveness, the negative factor, is measured as a distance, because it's not good to travel for people, basically. And there are like two methods we are going to use. Maybe I have a question here, but I have already explained that, how we would assess the site attractiveness for shoppers. Perhaps you can answer anyway, so that I can check who is still listening to me. How would you assess the site attractiveness for shoppers? Could you tell me? Give me some answers. Number of visits. Any other answers? Proximity. Good. Let's see. So basket assortment. Okay, so basically, yeah, the number of the type of assortment, the proximity, etc. So I can tell you it's what we said. We can basically measure mostly the floor space, and that's correct. And that's what those models take into consideration mainly. So I can show you the first formula. The first formula is called the Rayleigh's law, and basically here you can see the explanation. And this is quite maybe difficult to explain, but let's try. You can imagine you have two competing cities. Let's imagine we have two competing cities. The city 1 and city 2, or town 1 and town 2. And usually, or in this model, we are measuring the border point between those two cities for shoppers. And it means that usually the bigger the city is, the bigger the store catchment area it has usually. So the bigger the city is, the more people are going to visit it because of shopping, let's say. So you can see that the border point, let's say the distance of the breaking or border point from the city 1 can be calculated as the distance between the two locations, two cities, that's the D12, and it should be divided by 1 plus the square root and the, let's say, the division of the population of the town 2 and the population of the town 1. So you can see the bigger the town 2, the bigger the city 2, the shorter the distance, the breaking point from the city 1. Because basically the bigger the city 2, the more it steals the consumers from the city 1, let's say. That's basically the gravity. The bigger, the better. I will try, let's say, I will try to show you one chart. Let's say, I don't know if, yeah, this is the whiteboard. Yeah, let's try this. And you will tell me if you can see it. Can you see my picture? Okay, you can stop the answers. And now can you see the picture or not? Still not. Yeah. Let's try again. What about now? Now you can, right? So this is basically the Rayleigh's law. You can see the city 1 is smaller than the city 2. And the border point is marked as D0. And based on the Rayleigh's law, the border point is always closer to the smaller city, to the smaller area, and it's always farther from the bigger area. And you can see from this picture that basically the store catchment area is always bigger for the bigger area, for the bigger city. Is it clear enough for you, this explanation of the Rayleigh's law? Is it clear enough? Let's come back to the presentation. Okay. I don't know. I need to go back to my presentation again, but where I do have it. Check return running. Just a second, just a second. Strange. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just looking for one presentation, but I can't find it. Anyway, I think basically this example of the Rayleigh's law is like the most important one. It's like the most important one, what you need to understand from the gravity methods. So if you are all right, then if you all understand it, eventually we can make a break already. Are you agreed to make a break now? And after the break, we can start at 12:45 again. We can start at 12:45 again, and we can continue with one exercise for the calculations, right? So, so thank you for your attention. Is it all right for you? Are you all right? Good. So you would like to start earlier, maybe in 15 minutes? Okay, so yeah, if we start earlier, then we can also finish earlier. So it's fine. We can go fast and we can finish earlier. So I would start at 12:30. All right. Let's start at 12:30 again. So I will close it now, and we will start again at 12:30. So let's talk soon, right? So I'm closing it. Everybody can hear me now? All right, so thank you for your answers. So now we will go through one calculation exercise, which might be included also in the midterm test, even though I have no idea how to make the midterm yet, because nobody knows if and when the university is going to be open. So maybe we will have to make the midterm online, etc. So I don't know yet how to make it. However, well, this exercise is quite important and quite interesting, and it would be good, and it's fine if you can concentrate on it a little bit. You can even calculate by yourself, but I think it's better that you just follow me. I can ask you some questions step by step, and you will try to understand it. And we can make it even a little bit faster. So once we are finished with this, we can finish for today. But it's important to understand it. It's the calculation exercise, which is related to costs, basically. And I will show you. Sorry, I'm sorry about microphone. Sorry about microphone. Now it should work. Now it should work. Can you hear me now? Okay. So we can continue. We can continue hopefully. So you can see a table, and there are like two periods, 2005 and 2006, and we will compare sales and costs in these periods. And we will also have 4 stores, as you can see here, 4 stores. And we will measure sales and costs. And here you can see also the data. So this is basically the whole situation, as you can see in the table. The sales are marked as X. So X stands for sales, and C stands for costs. And we measure in the table the total sales, the sales per store, the same for costs, the total costs and the costs per store. If you would like to understand what's the meaning of costs here, it can be anything. It can be the costs of goods sold, and if you want, it can be the total costs. It doesn't matter. This is not important now. What is important is to understand how to make the analysis, which follows. So if you look at the table, you can also see the costs expressed as percentage, and these are expressed or marked as Y. Y is the percentage of costs. And I can ask you already, what's the percentage of the cost? How do you think the percentage is calculated? It's the percentage of what? Any idea? What's the meaning of the percentage? Because the costs can be expressed as the costs in million Czech crowns, and they can be calculated as the percentage of sales. So basically, you are right. I can see one answer. Thank you for the answer. It's costs divided by sales. Y0, Y1, that's the cost divided by sales. So you can see, for example, in the case of store 1, the costs were 20% of the sales. In the case of store 2, the costs were 30% of the sales. In the case of the store 3, the costs were 40% of the sales. It's clear. It's not so difficult. And now we can see two periods. The previous period is marked as 0, and the current period or the later period is marked as 1. And you can see the comparison now. And now, what can you see in the table? What has happened to the sales and what has happened to the costs? What can you see? What's happened to the sales and what has happened to the costs in total, I mean? What are the changes? What changes can you see? Okay, I can see some answers. I can see the answers. Thank you. So you have noticed very well. You have noticed very well that the sales increased and the costs decreased, which is good. That's good. And now we are going to calculate the differences, basically. The differences between the cost and the differences between the sales. So you can see that the costs decreased by almost 100 million Czech crowns. And the sales increased by 100. And now we need to understand what were the changes which influenced this decrease in the cost. And that's why we are going to make the analysis of costs using the so-called conversion method. But before we get to the analysis, you can tell me if you can see any other changes between the two following periods. Of course, there is one change. The total sales increased. But can you see any other changes besides those you have already mentioned? Okay. Any other answers, please? I can see one answer. The percentages of costs changed. Okay, so you can see the percentages of the costs changed because in the case of store 1, it decreased from 20 to 15. In the case of store 2, it increased from 30 to 40. In the case of store 3, it decreased from 40 to 20. And in the case of store 4, the percentage increased. That's perfect. That's important. So we can say there is a change in the levels of costs or in the cost levels, if you want. Any other change? Store 2 is doing worse in the second period according to sales. Perfect. Store 2 is really doing worse in the second period. That's right. At the same time, store 1 is doing better. Store 3 is doing better. Store 4 is doing also better in the second period. So we can say there is also the change in the sales structure. There is a change in the sales structure, basically. So once again, there are like 3 important changes. The first one is the change in the total sales. The total sales increased from 1,400 to 1,500. First change. The second change is the change in the cost levels. 20% to 15, 30 to 40, 40 to 20, 15 to 20. And the last change, the third change, is the change in the sales structure, which means that the sales of each store changed, basically. So that's like that's the beginning still of this exercise. So once again, we are going to analyze the decrease of the total costs. And we are going to measure the impact of 3 changes. We are going to measure the impact of 3 changes. The first change is the change in total sales. The second is the change in the cost levels. And the third change is the change of the structure, or in the structure of the sales. And our aim is to calculate the impact of each change separately. That's why we are going to use the so-called conversion method. So is it clear so far? Can we get already to the calculation? So I can see some answers. Okay. Okay, thank you. I will wait for a while. Okay, good. So yeah, so once again, I'm going to analyze the change in the total cost, and I'm going also to analyze the change in the average costs, But you will see how to calculate. Don't worry. Basically, this presentation is a guideline, and if you follow my presentation, you will not get lost. Yeah, the task is to basically analyze the causes of changes in costs, both in the absolute and the relative expression. Speaking about relative expression, I mean the average, but don't worry about that. What is the step 1? Step 1 is about the converted sales. So firstly, we need to calculate the converted costs, which are related to the previous levels of cost and the actual total sales and the actual or current sales structure. Normally, I ask my students how to make it, but I don't know if you are able to write it down. Maybe you can try. Maybe you can try to tell me how to make the formula for that. You know, you need to multiply. For that, you need to multiply the previous levels of costs times the actual sales for each store. Any idea how to make it? I can wait for a while. If not, I will continue. I will show you the formula. Any idea about the formula? How to make it? No? No answers? Don't be scared. It can be wrong. Okay, I will show you, and that's it. Basically, we will calculate the first converted sales. Sorry, the first converted cost as the sum for each store, for each store of the previous cost levels, which is Y0. These are previous cost levels, the percentages, times the current sales. And basically, if you calculate that, you will get a hypothetical figure, which is going to show you what would be your cost in the case you would have the previous levels of cost and the current sales. And then you make a sum out of that. And it's also marked as C01. C01. Why? Because it's a converted measure. And it means there is one impact from the past and two impacts, and the other impact from the current period. And the one impact from the past period is the levels of costs, and the impact from the current period is the sales structure and the total sales. I can show you in the table how to calculate that, so you can see the figures. And here we go. And here we got the figures. So basically C01 is calculated for each store, basically separately. So for example, for store 1, you take Y0, which is 20%, times the actual sales, 300. 20% times 300 is 60. For store 2, you take 30%, the level from the previous period, times the sales from the current period, which is 60. For the store 3, it's 40% times 600, which is 240. And for the store 4, it's 15% times 400, which is 60. So in total, the converted costs are 420. So basically, these would be the cost if we would have the previous cost levels and the current sales. So that's the first conversion. And we will continue to calculate the second conversion. But before we calculate the second conversion, we also need to calculate the so-called converted sales as well. So you can follow me how to calculate the converted sales. Can we go on? Are you following me? Yes, still? Can we get to the next step? All right. Thank you for your answers. If we had a class, then you would calculate it during the class, but unfortunately we don't have it, so we can continue. Yeah, step 2, calculation of the converted sales. The converted sales are basically sales which, in terms of structure, are related to the actual period, and in terms of the volume, let's say, or value, are related to the previous period. So basically, converted sales are sales related to the format total sales and the actual sales structure. So basically, I need to recalculate the sales and make a kind of hybrid sales, which basically relate to the structure of the current period and to the volume of the previous period. And we will use the following formula. which we have here. So let's try to explain. Basically, x1i divided by x1t is basically the proportion of the sales for each store from the current period. The proportion of the sales for each store for the current period. And when I take this proportion and multiply it by the total sales, xt0, from the last period, from the previous period, I get the converted sales for each store. So xi01 is this means the converted sales, and it equals to the total sales from the previous period times the proportion, let's say, of the sales from the current period for each store. So that's the formula. And in order to calculate it, we will use the table and we will input the data into the next column. So maybe let's see x01, and here we have the figures. You can see x01 is 1,400. So the total is the same as the total from the last period. And the proportions are the same as in the current period. So basically, if I were to explain how to calculate the figure for the for store one, how to calculate the figure for the store one, I take sales for store one, 300, divided, I divide it by 1,500, and I will multiply it by 1,400. The same for store two. I take 200, divided 1,000 by 1,500, and multiply it by 1,400. The same for store 3 and store 4. So this is the kind of converted sales, which in terms of structure refer or are related to the current period, and in terms of volume are related to the previous period. And maybe you don't understand why we are doing that, and we are doing that because we want to calculate the second converted costs, and we need this for the calculation of the second converted costs, which will be the step number 3, basically. So I don't know if you still are following me, if you can still understand. Is it still understandable for you? Let me know, please. And if you don't understand something, don't worry. Sometimes it helps to go through the presentation once again to try to calculate it. And don't worry about it. When I started, okay, I can repeat the calculation for step 2, no problem, I will do it. And once again, don't worry if you don't understand something, because when I started to teach this exercise, it was also difficult for us, because this is a kind of like a little bit more difficult calculation, and it takes some time maybe to digest. So once again, how to calculate the converted sales for store 1, or let's say for store 4. So for store 4, I'll take 400 divided by 1,500, which is the proportion from the current period. And I will multiply it by the total sales from the last period, 1,400. So for the store 4, it's 400 divided by 1,500 times 1,400. And then I get 373.333, etc. So that's That's the step 2, basically. And now we can move on to the step 3, which will be the last conversion. Let's get to the last conversion, which is called the second converted costs. And just look at my presentation, listen to me, and try to think about it. So basically, the second converted costs are again it's a hypothetical measure related to the former levels of costs, previous total sales, and actual sales structure. So there are basically 2 components from the previous period and 1 component from the current period. 2 components from the previous period, the levels of costs and total sales, and 1 component from the current period, sales structure. Any idea how to calculate it? We already have everything ready. We just need to multiply 2 figures. Just 2 figures need to be multiplied in order to get it. Any idea? No idea? So I will show you. Yeah, okay. I can see some answer. Converted costs times converted sales. Sounds almost good. But you don't need converted costs. You just need to take the converted sales, x01, times the previous cost levels, y0. Y0 times x01 for each store, and it's marked as C001 T, which stands for total. 00 stands for 2 influences from the previous period, and 1 stands for 1 influence from the current period. And basically, Y0 is the cost level from the previous period, and X01 are the converted sales, and the converted sales already include the total sales from the previous period and the sales structure from the current period. So you got it all, what you need here. Yeah, so once again, this is the calculation of the second converted costs for each store. Maybe we can just move on to the table where you can see the calculation again, and you can see the real figures. So we will use the last column in the table marked C001. And here we go with the outcomes. So these are the numbers. And how to make it? It's pretty clear. You just take, let's say for store 1, you take Y0, which is 20%, times X01, which is 280. So 2% times 280, and you get 56. For store 2, you get 30% times converted sales, 186, and you get 56. For store 3, you take 40% times 560, and you get 224. And for store 4, you take 15% times 373, and you get 56. In total, it's 392, which means basically that would be the total cost if we would have the previous cost levels, the previous total sales, and the current sales structure. So that's the second conversion, second and last conversion, basically. Yeah, so once again, second conversion means that there are like two impacts from the previous period and only one impact from the current period. Two from the previous are basically the cost levels and the total sales, and one impact from the current period, that's the sales structure. In total, it's 392. Any questions? Is it clear so far? Okay. Is it clear? Well, do you have any questions? If you have any questions, just let me know. I can answer. I can see there are 26 people listening to us. That's good. Even though we have many more people in the course, but still, hopefully it works. So now, thank you for your answers. And we can just move on, because now we are going to calculate the average cost levels. Average cost levels. I will show you how it's not difficult. First of all, we will calculate the average converted cost using this formula. So we will take the total converted cost, the first total converted cost, C01, and divided them by the current total sales, and we will mark it as Y01. Y01 are the average converted cost, or the average level of the converted cost, let's say, we can see. So basically we need to calculate that in order to isolate the influences in the next steps. So I will show you that we also need to calculate the previous average level of cost, the previous average level of cost. Then we need to calculate also the current average level of costs, and we need to calculate the average level of converted costs, which we already have finished, let's say. Maybe you can tell me now how you would calculate the average level of previous costs. Any idea how to calculate the average level of the previous costs? Y0. Any idea? No idea? So I will show you. Well, there is one answer. Thank you for the answer. There is one suggestion to sum them up and divide them by the quantity of stores. So that would make sense, but you need to take into consideration the weights. That's why it's much easier to only take the total costs and divide them by the total sales. That's it. So basically for the previous average level of costs, you can take the total costs for all stores, divide them by the total sales for all stores, and that's it. The same for the current average level of costs. So you just take the total current costs and divide them by the total sales in the current period. And the converted, we already know. So we take the converted total cost and divide them by the total current sales. And if we would calculate it, then we would get these numbers. We would get these numbers. These numbers are basically expressed as a number. If you want, you can express these numbers as percentages. So basically you can see that the the average level of previous cost was 28.93%. The average level of the current cost is 21.7%, and the average level of converted cost was 28%. So you can see the average level of costs decreased significantly. Is it clear so far? How to calculate the average? Just let me know. I can see still the same people answering. So thank you for the answers. We have 26 people watching. So thank you again. Thank you again for your answers. So as long as we understand, we can take the final steps already. There will be like 2 final steps. Because now, as long we already have all the conversions done, all the conversions are done. We are not going to make any more. It's almost all ready. Now we need to make the final comparison. We'll make the final comparison. Don't be scared. It looks a little bit complicated, but it's not. Let's look at the cost analysis in percentages. So you can see this figure. It's basically the comparison of the average costs. Y1 minus Y0. The average cost levels in the current period minus the average cost levels in the previous period is equal to 2 brackets. 2 brackets. And in each brackets, in each element, it measures basically one impact, one change, one impact and one change. And mathematically, it's absolutely correct because Y01 can be deleted. It's like 0. So basically, we have included into the equation the conversion Y01 in order to isolate the impacts of the changes which we have seen in the beginning. Because in the beginning, I have told you that there are like 3 important changes. The first change was the change in total sales. The second change was the change in the cost levels. And the third change was the change in the sales structure. And now we are going to calculate the impact of each change separately. And we already have it because each element in the each brackets basically measure the impact of one change separately. Is there any idea what's the impact of the first brackets, Y1 minus Y01? Any idea? The change in the cost levels, or the change in the total sales, or the change in the sales structure? Basically, there are like only 3 options. So now we need to decide if the first bracket measure the change of the cost levels, or the change in the sales structure, or the change in the total sales? Y1 minus Y01. Any idea? What does it measure? No, so far. Okay, so I can help you. The first one, the first bracket, Y1 minus Y01, it measures the impact of the change in the level of costs. Because basically Y1 and Y01 is different only by the levels of costs. Because in Y0, in Y1, basically, we have all the elements from the current period, but in the Y01, we have one element from the previous period, and these were the levels of cost. That's why. And the second brackets, the second element measures the change in what? Any idea? No idea. Change in the sales structure. Great. The second element measures the impact of the change in the sales structure. Thank you for your answer. And that's it. Because in the average, on the average level, we cannot measure the impact of the total sales. Here in the average on the average level, we can only measure those two impacts: the change in the level of costs and the change in the sales structure. And if you want, you can see the real figures. So y1 minus y0 is minus 0.07262, which means, sorry, let's go back, which means that the total level of costs, or the average level of costs, decreased by minus 0.07262, which means basically 7 percentage points. 7 percentage points. That's the total decrease. And there were two impacts. The first one was the impact of the change in the cost levels. And that's this one, F1, Y1 minus Y01. And that's minus 0.0633. And it means that if nothing else would change, and only the levels of costs would change, then the total average cost level would decrease by 6 percentage points. But there was also the impact of the sales structure change, and that was minus 0.00929. So basically not even 1 percentage point. And both impacts were negative, which means that both impacts have decreased the average level of costs. So as a result, we can say that the company was lucky, because even though they have increased the total sales, they have managed to decrease the cost levels, and they have also managed to change the sales structure in a way that the total average level of costs decreased by 7 percentage points. So this is the analysis of the percentages, basically. Is this clear so far? Okay, thank you. I can see your answers. Thank you for your answers. And now we can see the final step, which is the comparison of the total costs. This is even more, let's say, complex, but it's clear. Basically, we compare the total costs. The total cost from the current period minus the total cost from the previous period. And this can be divided into three elements. Three changes. That's why three elements. That's why we have three brackets. That's why we have three F1, F2, and F3. And you can see that we have included into the equation the converted costs. The first converted cost, C01, and the second converted cost, C001. And the idea is to isolate the changes. I'll isolate the impact of the changes. That's the meaning of this method. So you can already maybe tell me what's the meaning of the first element, the first brackets, C1 minus C01. What's the meaning of this? What impact does it measure? Is the same as in the previous case. Excellent. I can see the first correct answer. Nice. So it measures the change in the levels of cost. The same as in the previous case. The second element, the second brackets, measures basically the impact of the change of, could you tell me what's the meaning of the second, the middle one? It's not the sales structure. It's not the sales structure. It's the third one. Any other idea? Not sales structure, but the change in. I can wait. Tell me, please. The total, not costs level, but the total sales. It measures the change in the total sales. And the third element, the third bracket, measures the change in, and you can tell me again, the change in what? The sales structure. Excellent. Yeah, we got it. So now we've got all the composition. So we can see we have three brackets, three elements, and each element measures one single impact. And now we can see the real numbers. Let's see them. So total costs decreased by minus 80, so they decreased by 80 million. The impact of the change in the cost levels was minus 95. The impact of the change in the total sales was 28, plus 28. That was positive. And finally, the impact of the change in sales structure was 13, minus 13. So it basically corresponds to our findings from the average level analysis. because from the average levels analysis, we have found out that the first impact was negative. Here we have the same. The second impact, the sales structure, was also negative. Yeah, it's here as well. And here we have one impact on top of that, and that's the change in the total sales. And that's positive, 28. So you can see that the company has managed to grow the sales, to increase the sales, and the impact of the isolated impact of the growth in the sales was positive, 28. So basically, the growth in the sales had an impact on the increase of cost, but there were two more effects which had a negative impact on the costs. They were decreasing the costs. So basically, the first one, the change in the cost levels decreased the costs by -95, and the change in the sales structure decreased also the total cost by 13, -13. So basically, the negative impact, which was positive for a company, was prevailing, and that's why the total impact was -80. So the company could be happy about that. Even though they have increased the sales, they have managed to decrease the costs. And that's it, basically. That's the end of this exercise. So how do you feel about it? Are you scared too much, or can you survive? Okay, thank you for your answers. Let's have a look. Of course, you can go through it again. I can see it's also it's loaded, so you should have an access to it. Before we finish, we are not finishing yet. I will show you some more examples of exercises, so we can have a look at them. So let's take a look at some more exercises. I will show you in total 4 more exercises. We are not going to calculate them. We are not going to analyze them step by step, but maybe you can tell me just in the beginning, once you see all the figures, what kind of changes there were. So let's see the first exercise. What about this? If you look at this exercise, can you see any changes there? What has changed here? Has anything changed? What can you see here? So did anything change? Nothing, obviously. I think that nothing changed, right? You are right. Nothing has changed. This is just for you to notice. Nothing has changed. So there is nothing to calculate, basically. So we can see all the impacts are 0. Basically, you can see the average cost level was 30%, and it remained the same. So there's no way. So let's move on to exercise number 2. Look at this one and tell me what has changed. Here we can see some change already. All right. So you are saying the sales structure changed, so the total cost changed. Of course, the total cost decreased from 300 to 200, and the total change was basically caused by the change in the sales structure, as you said. So perfect. And if we calculate it, it's just going to be the impact number 2, because the previous level of costs was 30%, the current was 20%, so there is a change of 10 percentage points, and this change was caused by the change in the sales structure, basically. Here again, the total cost you can see minus 100, which is caused by the impact number 3, which is the change in the sales structure. All right, so that's the exercise number 2, and now we can see exercise number 3. Look at this one.